How are you guys doing? Today is Monday, November 8th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Giancarlo Stanton. The elite designated hitter for the New York Yankees turns 32 today, and my intent with this episode is, of course, to shine light on the accomplishments, the achievements, and the accolades of one Giancarlo Stanton. From the moment that he stepped foot into the league to where he is now, he is one of the highest paid players in baseball, as he is currently on a $325 million contract over 13 years with the Yankees, and he was, I believe, the first $325 million contract at that. He is known to be one of the greatest power hitters, at least among baseball players today. He's had a really unlucky bout with injury, but in the games that Giancarlo Stanton does play, he does show that he is one of the greatest baseball players to ever put on a uniform. It is possible that he may enter the Hall of Fame, even though I believe his injuries may give him a little bit of trouble with that. But as of right now, Giancarlo Stanton is very easily one of the best players in baseball, earning him an elite profile in a sport where thousands of professional baseball players are competing to be the very best, to at least compete to get to the MLB. And Giancarlo is one of the best in the MLB consistently year in and year out. So just to give a little bit of a background, he's originally from Los Angeles. I'm from the LA area, so I know the area that he's from. He's from Sherman Oaks, in the San Fernando Valley. He would eventually get selected in the second round of the 2007 MLB draft by the then Florida Marlins, because that's how recent the Miami Marlins are. So when he signed with the team in 2007, when he was, of course, 18, that was when, of course, they were known as the Marlins. It would take Giancarlo a couple of seasons to eventually get called up. He would play his very first games in 2010 in his age 20 season. He would play 100 games in a season in which the Florida Marlins finished with an 80-82 record, of course missing the playoffs with the third best record in the NL East. Giancarlo Stanton would finish with 93 hits in those 100 games, as, of course, playing at the next level. That's very impressive to be able to do so as a rookie, especially as a 20-year-old rookie. That's very young for a rookie to get started. Most baseball players get started in their mid-20s. He finished with 45 runs on the seasons, 21 doubles, 22 home runs, and 59 RBIs. He would finish with a .259 batting average, a .326 OPS, .507 slugging percentage in his rookie season, finishing with an .833 OPS. And following that rookie season, people were at least aware of what Giancarlo Stanton can do. Going into his second season, it was the final season that the Miami Marlins were referred to as the Florida Marlins. His age 21 season came in 2011. He played 150 games in a season where the Marlins finished with a 72-90 record. They finished with the worst record in the NL East after losing 8 more games than they had the previous season. Giancarlo Stanton would finish with 135 hits in 150 games, as he finished with 79 runs on the year. In his first complete season, he finished with 30 doubles, he finished with 5 triples. This is the only season in his MLB career in which he finished with at least 1 triple on the season. He finished with 34 home runs, 87 RBIs, and he did all this with an .893 OPS. Finished with a .262 batting average, 3 points higher than it was the year before. His .356 on-base percentage was 30 points higher than it was his rookie season, and his slugging percentage is at .537 was 30 points higher than it was, making his .893 OPS 60 points higher than it was his previous season. So, of course, in his second season, Giancarlo Stanton showed that at least, even though he wasn't making significant contact, once he made contact, he was driving the ball very far. Following his first 2 seasons, he would go into the very first season that the Florida Marlins would go as the Miami Marlins in 2012. And in his age 22 season, he would go on to play 123 games in a season in which the Miami Marlins finished with a 69-93 record. Taking a look at how he fared this season, he would go on to be named an All-Star in the very first season that he would be named an All-Star. In the middle of the season, he would have to deal with surgery on his knee, so he would play 123 games, but it was enough to make him an All-Star. He had 130 hits in those 123 games. The first time in his MLB career, he had more hits than games played. He had 75 runs on the season. He finished with 30 doubles for the second year in a row. He had 37 home runs and 86 RBIs, one less RBI and 3 more home runs than he did the previous season in 27 less games. He would go on to finish with a .290 batting average. At that point, that would be a career high. And even to this day, he has never posted a batting average higher than he had in his first All-Star season in 2012. He would finish with a .361 on-base percentage, at that point a career high. And then he would go on to lead the National League in slugging percentage at .608. This would be the first time he topped 600, and that is the second highest slugging percentage he's ever posted in a season. He finished with a .969 OPS, which at that point was the highest OPS in his career, and even to this day is the second highest OPS he's ever posted as an MLB player. He will go on, in addition to being named as an All-Star, like I said, he would be given the National League crown for slugging percentage the first time he actually led a league in a statistical category. Regardless, the Miami Marlins had missed the playoffs. But, of course, following that season, this would lead into his third season with the Marlins organization. In his age 23 season in 2013, he would play 116 games in a season where the Miami Marlins finished with a 62-100 season. This season, Giancarlo would be dealing with yet another injury. In this season, he would eventually have to deal with a hamstring injury, which lasted about a quarter of the season. But looking at the games that he did play in the Miami Marlins stadium that they built exclusively for him, he would finish with 106 hits in the 116 games he played. He had 62 runs on the season, the least amount of runs you put it together in a full season, at least until that point. He finished with 26 doubles. He finished that the third consecutive season he had at least 25, and the fourth season he had at least 20. He finished with 24 home runs and 62 RBIs on the year. He finished with a .249 batting average, which at that point was the lowest batting average he put together in his career. He would put together a .365 OPS on-base percentage, which would be the highest of his career at that point. And he would put together a .480 slugging percentage, which even to this day is the lowest slugging percentage that Giancarlo put together in a season. He would finish with an .845 on-base percentage, his fourth consecutive season with an OPS above 800. And like I said, following that season, the Marlins wouldn't necessarily make the playoffs. And because Giancarlo missed so many games, he missed a playoff bid. This, however, would lead into his fifth season with the Miami Marlins organization. In his age 24 season in 2014, he would play 145 games in a season where the Miami Marlins finished with a 77-85 record. They would finish fourth in the National League East and miss the playoffs. In all of his years with the Marlins, they missed the playoffs. I guess, spoiler alert, but in those 145 games he played, he finished with 155 hits. This would be the second time in his first 5 years in the league that he finished with more hits than games played. He finished with 89 runs on the season. At that point, that was a career high. And then follow along with that, he finished with 31 doubles. The third season he's had at least 30 doubles. He finished with 37 home runs, leading the National League. That it would be the first time he's led the National League in home runs, and that would tie his career high at that point, his third season in his first 5 years where he had at least 30 home runs. And his 105 RBIs would be the very first time that he topped the 100 RBI mark. His 13 stolen bases would be the only time that he stole at least 10 bases in a season. And his 94 walks were the most time he's ever been walked in a season. He would finish with a .288 batting average, which at that point was the second highest in his career. He finished with a .395 on-base percentage, which was the highest in his career at that point, and even to this day is the second highest on-base percentage he's ever posted. He would lead the National League in slugging percentage for the second time in his first 5 years in the league with a .555 slugging percentage. The fourth time his slugging percentage topped 500. He finished with a .950 OPS. The second time in his career, his OPS topped 900. And his 299 total bases would lead the National League. That's the only time he's led the National League in total bases. And his 24 intentional walks would also lead the National League as well. Of course, he would go on to be named an All-Star. He was named a Silver Slugger for the very first time in his career. And in 2014, after an amazing statistical season, he would finish behind Clayton Kershaw in voting as he was the best hitter in the National League that year. However, Clayton Kershaw went 21-3 with a 1.77 ERA for a Dodgers team that actually made the playoffs. So, of course, that would be the reasoning for that. But, of course, this would be the year that Giancarlo inserted himself into the best player in baseball conversation. And that was by the time he was an All-Star for the second time. This transitions into his third season in the MLB, his age 25 season in 2015. In 2015, he would only play 74 games in a season where the Marlins finished with a 71-91 record, winning 6 less games than they had won the previous season. Giancarlo Stanton would go on to make the All-Star team, of course, after hitting monster home runs like he had been doing the previous season. However, in this season, he would eventually go on to he broke the hamate bone in his left wrist. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But yet he would be hit by yet another pitch. This was the year after he got hit in the face with a pitch. But in the 74 games that he did go on to play, he was named an All-Star for the third time in his first 6 years in the league. He had 74 hits and he had 74 hits in 74 games. The third time in his first 6 seasons, his hits at least equaled he had at least as many hits as he had games played. He finished with 47 runs on the season in 24 games, which is actually an incredible pace. He had 12 doubles in the 74 games, which is on pace for about 24. He had 27 home runs and 67 RBIs in half of a season, which would have been on pace for, let's say, 54 and 134. But, of course, those are hypotheticals. He finished with a .265 batting average, a .346 on-base percentage, which were pretty on par with what he had been doing at that point in his career, which is still incredibly tough to do, by the way. He finished with a .606 slugging percentage the second time in his career. He had top 600. He finished with a .952 OPS, which at that point was the third time in his career his OPS had been over 900, which is a very tough feat to do in the MLB. And like I said, he would be named an All-Star for the third time in his first 6 years. But of course, injury had plagued him for at least those 4 years, at least until then. And of course, it didn't stop the next season. Going into his age 26 season in 2016, Giancarlo Stanton would play 119 games for a Miami Marlins team that would finish with a 79-82 record, finishing with the third best record in the NL East, with 8 more wins than they had won the previous year. Looking at how Giancarlo was injured this season, he would eventually go on to suffer a grade 2 hamstring strain that was originally thought to be season ending, but he caught it towards the end of the year. In the 119 games that Giancarlo Stanton played in 2016, he finished with 99 hits. He finished with 56 runs on the year. He had 20 doubles, 27 home runs, which would be yet another season. This would be the 7th season in a row he had at least 20 home runs. And the 5th time in his first 7 seasons, he had at least 25 home runs. He had 74 RBIs on the season. He would finish with a .240 batting average, which even to this date is the lowest batting average he's ever posted in his career. He finished with a .326 on-base percentage, which is the lowest on-base percentage he's posted since his rookie season, which was the exact same on-base percentage. He finished with a 489 slugging percentage, which to this date is also the second lowest slugging percentage he has ever posted in his career. His 815 OPS to this date is the lowest on base plus slugging combination that he's ever put together in a season. But of course, following that season, this would lead to his final season that he played in Miami with the Marlins. In 2017, in his age 27 season, Giancarlo Stanton would play 159 games in a season in which the Miami Marlins would finish with a 77-85 record, the second best record in the division. However, they would not go on to win. And standings-wise, that is the closest that Giancarlo has gotten to winning the National League East. In his final season in Miami, he would go on to be named an All-Star for the fourth time in his eighth season in the league, as he was crowned the MVP, the most valuable player of the National League. In 159 games played, he finished with 168 hits. This would be the fourth time in his 8-year career he finished with at least as many hits as games played. 9 more hits than games played. He had 123 runs, which to this date is the most runs he's ever posted in a season. The first time he's ever eclipsed 100, even 90 runs, and he did so by 33. He finished with 32 doubles on the season, which at that point was a career high and the fourth time he's posted at least 30 doubles in a season. He finished with 59 home runs to lead the National League. That is the only time he's ever eclipsed 40 home runs in his MLB career to date, and he did so by 19. He finished with 132 RBIs on the season, which also led the National League, which would top his career high at that point by 27 RBIs. He would finish with a 281 batting average, which at that point was the third time his batting average had been at least 280. He finished with a 376 on-base percentage, which is the second highest on-base percentage in his career at that point. He would lead the National League in slugging percentage for the third time in his career with a 631. That would be his career high. He has never posted a higher slugging percentage in his career. This would be the third time he has posted a 600 slugging percentage in his first 8 years in the league as well. And this would be the first time and the only time in his MLB career that his OPS would ever top 1,000. His OPS plus at 169 also topped the National League. OPS plus is basically where you compare to the average batter, whereas the average hitter in the National League has a 100 OPS plus. He was 69 points better than the average hitter in the National League. This is the only time that Giancarlo Stanton has ever been named the MVP of either the American League or the National League in his career. This would go on to be like I said, in addition to being the fourth All-Star and the most recent All-Star in his career, this is the second time he's been given a Silver Slugger in his career, and he has never been given a Silver Slugger or an All-Star since his last season in Miami. Following his last season in Miami, which was so statistically significant, he signed a 13-year, $325 million contract to play with the storied New York Yankees franchise. And ever since he's been a part of the Yankees, honestly, it's really kind of been a different brand of baseball for him, as at least he's actually been able to touch the playoffs this time. His very first season with the New York Yankees was his age 28 season in 2018. In 2018, he would play 158 games in a season in which the Yankees finished with a 162 record, easily the first time that Giancarlo has won 100 games in a regular season. They would finish with the second best record in the American League East, as the Boston Red Sox had won the division that year. In the 158 games he played, Giancarlo finished with 164 hits in those 158 games. This would be the fifth time in his 9-year career he would finish with at least as many hits as games played. He finished with 102 runs. That would be the second time in his MLB career in a row that he finished with at least 100 runs in a season. He finished with 34 doubles in that season. That would go down as his career high. He has not hit more than 34 doubles in a season in his MLB career since, or ever other than that season. He would finish with 38 home runs, which would go on to be the fifth time in his MLB career he had at least 30 home runs. His 100 RBIs would be the third time he's had at least 100 in a season. He would finish with 211 strikeouts, the only time in his MLB career he struck out at least 200 times, which is a lot of times to strike out, by the way. He finished with a 266 batting average, which was virtually on par with what he was doing for his career. Finished with a 343 on base percentage and a 509 slugging percentage. This would go down as yet another year. His slugging percentage would be over 500, the seventh time in his 9-year career at that point. He finished with an 852 on base percentage, and he would get some MVP votes, but not a lot. In his very first playoff berth, the New York Yankees would end up beating the Oakland Athletics in the American League wildcard game. And then they would end up losing in the American League Division Series in 4 games to their division rival, the Boston Red Sox. Following Giancarlo's very first taste of the playoffs, he would go into the 2019 season on the injury list due to a bicep strain, and then he would return due to a knee injury as Giancarlo Stanton would play a grand total of 18 games in 2019. In those 18 games, he finished with 17 hits, 3 doubles, 3 home runs, 13 RBIs, as of course the injury bug bit him again. Going into what he was able to do, he was able to make it back in time for the playoffs. However, in 2019, the Yankees would finish with a 103-59 record, winning 3 more games than the previous year, and they would go on to win the division. This is the only time that the Yankees have won the American League East since Giancarlo has been on the team. They would end up sweeping the Minnesota Twins in the American League Division Series before losing in the Championship Series to the Houston Astros in 6. But of course, following that loss, this would transition into the 2020 MLB season, which, as many people will remember, was impacted by COVID to the point where the 162-game season had to be shortened to 60 games. And they did have to expand the playoffs in order to allow 8 teams from the American League and the National League to play in the playoffs. In Giancarlo's age 30 season, he would play 23 of these 60 games that season, as he did have to deal with a hamstring injury in that season as well. Giancarlo would finish with 19 hits in the 23 games that he played, with 12 runs, 7 doubles, 4 home runs, 11 RBIs. He had a 250 batting average on the season and an 887 OPS, as this was as a combined in 2019-2020, he would play 41 aggregate games that would account for his age 29 and 30 seasons. So of course this would transition into the 2020 playoffs, where he would help the Yankees had the second best record in the American League East, which of course qualified them for the playoffs. They would win their first round series against the Cleveland Indians. They swept them 2-0 before losing in the American League Division Series to the Tampa Bay Rays, who went into the playoffs with the best record in the American League. But Giancarlo did actually have a big grand slam in the 9th inning to get a big win over the Tampa Bay Rays in one of the games of the division series, but they lost the series regardless. This transitions into this most recent 2021 season, the last full season that Giancarlo Stanton has played to date, which most recently came to an end with the Atlanta Braves being the last team standing. In Giancarlo's age 31 season, in his 4th season with the New York Yankees, his 2nd full season with the Yankees, he would play 139 games in a season in which the Yankees finished with a 92-70 record, finishing with the 3rd best record in the American League, yet still qualifying for the wild card game. He missed 13 games this most recent season with a quad injury, but he still was able to play 139 games, which is a lot for Giancarlo Stanton. This would be the 5th season that he would play in which he played at least 135 games. And in those 139 games, he finished with 139 hits. This would go down as his 6th season, I believe, in his first 11, in which he's finished with at least as many hits as games played in the league. He finished with 19 doubles on the season, 64 runs. He had 35 home runs on the season, which would be the sixth time in his MLB career he's had at least 35 or at least 34 home runs in a season. His 97 RBIs would be the fourth time in the MLB that he's had at least 90 RBIs in an MLB season. He would finish with a 273 batting average, which was a little above par compared to what he was doing for the rest to his prior seasons. He would finish with a 354 OBP, a 516 slugging percentage, which would be yet another season in his 12-year career. This would be season number 9 in his 12-year career, in which he would finish with a slugging percentage of at least 500. And he would finish with an 870 OPS. He has not made the All-Star team yet as a member of the Yankees, but of course, as a member of the Yankees, he's been a very vital member of that organization. Even in this most recent year, they lost to the Red Sox in the wild card, but still, Giancarlo Stanton was a big part of the reason that they were there. And now that he is turning 22 today, I do think that Giancarlo Stanton is a player that will age very well going into his 30s, considering how well power hitters have fared going into their 30s and even their 40s. I think that Giancarlo Stanton has a lot of great baseball ahead of him, and that New York Yankees fans have a lot in store. With that said, I want to thank the Baseball Reference websites, the MLB websites, and the various Wikipedia articles I use, at least for the teams, to get the numbers and facts and stats that I needed in order to do this episode. I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode, listening to all 26 minutes of it. And hopefully by this time next year, I'll have more to talk about when it comes to Giancarlo Stanton and how he's playing as one of the best power hitters in baseball. With that said, once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, I will come back tomorrow for another episode of The Elite. And until then, thanks for listening to this piece. I hope all is well, and I'll come back with another episode tomorrow. Until then, peace out, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow.